Hey, this is John Henderson with HH Law. Today we were talking about gun trust. What is it? Why do you need it? Gun trusts are something that a lot of firearm owners need to consider having. These laws apply on a federal level, even though we are in the state of South Carolina. These laws and this discussion applies across the United States of America. We've got some other videos as well on the Second Amendment and on constitutional carry and some other things that we encourage you to look at as well. But for purposes of this, is like, what is a gun trust? And we're going to try to answer that question for you today. The first thing to know is that there are two primary areas that we look to for federal regulation of firearms. And the first is the Gun Control Act of 1968, lays it out, and then also the National Firearms Act. So what is a gun trust? A gun trust is essentially a document outlining specific firearms that somebody has acquired over their lifetime. These firearms are ones that are actually described in federal law. Now, most firearms are not covered under federal law. A 9mm handgun, a shotgun, a deer hunting rifle of multiple types. Those types of firearms are not covered under federal law. They're not addressed. Everyone's free to have these firearms with no regulation at all. But the purpose of a gun trust is if you have acquired firearms that are regulated on a federal basis, that you should have a trust, because what happens when you die, these firearms should be in a trust so that you can pass them on to somebody afterwards. Specific types of firearms must be registered and an extra tax paid for those firearms. And we'll get into that in just a minute. But to understand this, there are certain types of trusts. So there's irrevocable trusts, and then there are revocable trusts. So an irrevocable trust is one that you cannot change. It dictates this item, and this sort of gets into estate planning a little bit, but for purposes of a gun trust, it would dictate exactly who gets this firearm when I pass, to my sons or my brother or whoever I want to pass it on to when I pass. I can't change it. It's permanent. That's the way that that's going to go. A revocable trust, if we set one of those up and have a firearm in a revocable trust, then we would be able to change the terms of that trust throughout my lifetime. I could be the creator of that trust and also the trustee who dictates what happens with it. And then I can change the beneficiaries if I want to. So there's the two overarching ideas about what types of trust you would put firearms in. And a trust is going to be necessary not only when I die, but also if I become incapacitated, if I develop Alzheimer's, if something happens, I have a traumatic brain injury at some point in my life, and I'm just no longer making functional sense. So if I have these federally protected firearms, I'm thinking like a machine gun. Silencers are also included in there, and we'll talk about some more in a moment. But these types of items, I've registered these items. Let's just use a machine gun. If I had a machine gun, I don't. But if I did, I'd have to register it and pay a tax on it. But if I died, it can't just go to my wife because she's not registered to own or possess that firearm. So what happens to it? That's the big question that a gun trust is trying to answer. And so all Class 3 firearms can't just pass. I can't give them away. I can't sell them. I can't do anything with them but own and possess them once I've been registered and paid my taxes for them. Once I am authorized to own that firearm, I can't give them to anybody else. I can't even give them to somebody else for storage or any other purpose. So I have to figure out what to do with them. So we use a gun trust to do that. Let's go over quickly what is under the Class 3 firearms. And I've got a list of them here. We've got fully automatic firearms, including machine guns. We have silencers and suppressors and mufflers, short-barreled shotguns, short-barreled rifles, destructive devices such as grenades and bombs would be included, and any other weapons, such as a knife that doesn't fall into a specific category, like maybe certain types of bayonets and that sort of thing might fall under the Class 3 firearms. What you do to try to figure out is you can't purchase these items without registering and being authorized by the federal government to do them. Generally, what you do is once you qualify, then you pay a $200 or some amount of a tax for a stamp, just like you would for duck hunting or some other participation in other firearm related sports. But you would pay a $200 tax stamp to get the stamp, and then you would be authorized to have it. But now I've got to figure out who I'm going to give it to. There's a few notes to know about gun trust. So when the future transfers that happen during probate, if you've set up a gun trust appropriately in the right way, you're bypassing probate and you've already dictated what is going to happen to your firearms once you're gone. So a gun trust can legally own a firearm. You don't have to submit identification or fingerprints or anything like that to own that firearm. So I wouldn't necessarily own it myself, but my trust would own this firearm. It also allows multiple people to legally use the weapon. Otherwise, when it's owned individually and not in the trust, then only I am authorized to use that firearm or possess it. And then the other thing is it provides clear instructions as to how to facilitate the firearm transfer if I become incapacitated or when I die. And so in summation, most people, if you have a class 3 firearm, you need to have a gun trust because this is going to help you transfer it on to your children or someone else who is a responsible citizen who is able to qualify to use the firearm. And it's also going to take it out of my individual possession and control and register it in the name of that trust only. And that can have a lot of useful benefits. What I would suggest is if you own a class 3 firearm, you're considering getting a class 3 firearm, that you would contact a lawyer and consult a lawyer about gun trust. You may even consult with us or call our office if you have any questions. I'm John Henderson, and this is HH Law.